Poštovani gledaoci, dobar dan. Vi gledate još jedno izdanje emisije Pola sata demostata. Čast mi je da danas u našoj emisiji možemo da ugostimo norvešku ambasadorku, gospođu Kristin Melsom, sa kojom ćemo razgovarati malo više o odnosima Srbije i Norveške, ali i o aktuelnim geopolitičkim temama u zemlji i svetu. Hello and welcome.
Thank you so much. Dobar dan, drago mi je.
It's really a pleasure to have you here today and to have an opportunity to talk to you and to shed some light on the bilateral cooperation between our two countries. We have a fantastic cooperation. What can you tell us about that? Can you name some examples of our bilateral cooperation that you are most proud of?
Okay, the bilateral relation between Norway and Serbia has been really good and, historically good also from the Yugoslavia time. So it's not something new, but something that has continued. If I should talk about cooperation today, of course, we have for quite some years, actually, been assisting in the work with the media reform. Of course, not alone, but together, both with the ministry, with the civil society, and with the OSCE mission as well. And as you have seen, it takes time, but the results now is a new media law, so at least some progress. And I'm proud to be part of this work, yes. But of course, we can also talk about, discussion about energy and also Norwegian assistance when it comes to EU integration.
So very fruitful bilateral cooperation.
Well, we try as best as we can. I cannot kind of exclude that when it comes to commercial cooperation, it's rather low. But on institutes and in the government, then I think it is very good.
You mentioned media. Mm-hmm. Demostat has conducted something called Demostat's qualitative media monitoring of national frequencies and also of the radio television of Serbia, which is the national broadcaster. What we have found in our monitoring is basically a very big censorship of opposition parties on the radio television of Serbia, but also of critical thinking. What can we do to improve that and to have more critical opinions and more of critical thinking on the national television, but also in Serbia, in the media in general?
I think in general that what we call media illiteracy has really become a kind of topic, and that also the polarization and that people tend to watch what they already agree on instead of actually also watching different channels that actually come with different topics. But it's the freedom of media, so it's in one way it's difficult to tell any radio station that you should open up for other voices and so on, because it is up to the editor to decide. But to allow frequencies, that you actually can reach the whole country. So to open up the possibility for more people to actually choose is a possibility. But it's difficult to decide what people want to watch and listen to.
It's one of the problems of media scene today, not just in Serbia, I suppose, difficult to decide.
It's everywhere. And, when you look at the social medias, with their algorithms, and, even if you think that you have an open mind, you are actually kind of put into your same thinking, like an echo chamber, where you hear what you want to hear instead of, also hear the other part. So this is a challenge all over the world. This is not something particular for Serbia, but of course access to different channels and so on is a kind of start.
Mm-hmm. Speaking about advantages and the European Union, it's one of very important topics for you as a country, for you as ambassador, for us as country as well. How many advantages of EU membership are compensated by joining the European Economic Area, and what would EEA membership mean for Serbia?
Could I start with some historic
Please
thinking?
Please do.
Yeah, because yesterday it was actually 30 years since Norway voted no to become member of European Union. And I remember that day very well. I voted and I personally was not that satisfied with the result. But two years before that, we signed the EEA agreement. And actually the start of the EEA agreement was actually because the European Union started their work with the internal market, and the EFTA countries wanted, to avoid that they were left outside. So they started to work with the EEA agreement. Parallel, that several countries, mine included, decided to apply for EU membership. So in a way, the EEA agreement could serve as a kind of platform or to become EU members, but then we voted no. And the EEA agreement has served us well, for 30 years. But that means that we are part of the internal market. We have free movement of people. We have access to certain, funds, to cooperation in science, technology, and so on. But that also means that we are not part of the decision-making process, and we have to follow EU legislation for not very many areas. So, there are advantages, but there are also some disadvantages. And nowadays, we see that the EEA agreement was for EU in a different time. And now the EU expands to so many areas that are not included in the EEA agreement, which means that we need to decide whether we should apply for a separate agreement to be part of also this cooperation.
Great, many advantages. It came with many advantages to the country back then, especially in 1994 as well. Is there a parallel, perhaps, between Norway's status in the EEA and Serbia's status after signing the Stabilization and Association Agreement with the European Union?
Well, there are some parallels in one way, but at the same time, the Status and Association Agreement is actually a kind of transition into EU membership, while the EEA is not. It is our agreement as part of being part of the inner market. And so in one way you can say yes, but in the other way I would say no. But it's an important path for Serbia with everything you need to do actually to integrate into EU. And of course your agreement now does not open for the inner market or for the free movement of people. But you have some access in some areas like the IPA fund that we don't have, of course. And we have also, the EEA grants. So we are actually also, helping the least favorable countries in the European Union, and mostly on the Eastern Europe with funds, which is also, you can say, a way to pay for some of our advantages being part of the inner market.
Norway is a big and very important donor as well. Let's say among the most prominent donors in Serbia. We thank you for that. Your country has mainly systematic programs and projects, to call it like that. How satisfied are you with the implementation of those systematic projects?
Well, as you said, we have been assisting Serbia in many years, I think like from 2000 or maybe even before, I'm not sure. And I think, you have a good infrastructure to implement the projects. But then we talk about You change people from time to time, and there's always, the constitutional kind of memory and so on is not always there, and that is a challenge, how to be sure that what we have already achieved will be followed up, and that we have the memory to actually continue. So there, it's very difficult to say exactly, yes, has it been a success or has it been a failure, or maybe has something in between, or some projects maybe have been very good and really kind of added value for the Serbian society, while others maybe were, we didn't achieve what we had thought in the beginning. But I can't really tell you here which one. It's a long time frame. A lot of people have been involved during the years. But I always find it interesting when I meet people and they tell me about a project that actually have benefited them, and I'm very pleased when I hear that we have actually achieved something.
The electric power industry of Serbia is also one very important topic when you say cooperation between Norway and Serbia. How do you view the engagement of Norwegian experts in the Serbian power system?
Well, I'm very pleased that actually Serbian authorities thought about us when they search for competent people that actually could be part of this supervisory board in EPS. But, they are there on their own merits. It's not our government. It's not a government to EPS cooperation. There are 3 individuals with a lot of experience and competence when it comes to transformation of a public company into a modern company. And so I really hope that what was the aim behind constructing or this board, that they also managed to do what follow the intention of the owners. So we would just have to wait and see. I know that it takes time. I know also that there are different culture. So it's not an easy path. But I'm pleased that we have some really competent people there from Norway with their experience, and that can actually be a positive change for EPS.
Exactly, because EPS, Serbian electric power industry, is critical as any other country to have very well-working management and well-working electric power industry, especially in these uncertain times.
Absolutely, and that was the reason why also the need to do something, to look into how to transform your electric, your company, but also electricity as such. When we had a mild winter last winter, so things luckily in a way, but we don't know. And harsh times can come again, and with the climate change, now we live in a very unpredictable world in so many layers. Even in the energy layer.
Not just in the politics, but also when it comes to energy. Energy is another very important and great topic, not just in Serbian society, not just in the Norwegian society, but also in the world. Speaking about critical infrastructure, we can also speak about critical elements. We can speak about oil, gas. Norway's, in that sense, very famous in the world. How everything started when it comes to the revolution of Norway in the field of oil and gas?
Well, somebody said that we won the lottery when we discovered oil and gas in the North Sea. But, on the other side, we also had a really good strategic thinking, politician that had a strategic thinking about how to manage this wealth. So it's not just about finding the oil, but it's also how we managed it, the fortune, and how we invested it into the society, but also that we also created this sovereign global fund, where we actually put revenues aside for future generations. So, of course, it changed our society. Norway normally, is a country with a lot of natural resources. Our country is mostly powered by hydropower. So actually the gas is mostly sold to the world, or to Europe in particular. But we also have a lot of other minerals. And now in this time when we are talking about also critical minerals, this is also a topic in Norway. And besides, of course, everything related to renewable energy.
Renewable energy can be heard a lot these days in Serbia. Topic of lithium is basically everywhere, not just in Serbia, but also in the European Union. Critical material, critical for the future, critical for the green agenda as well. Lithium is a hot topic in Serbia because you can hear that people are worried what's going to happen. There is insecurity in that sense. But on the other side, we are all aware how important material it is for the green agenda, for the future, for green economy in the future. In that sense, what lithium can bring to Serbia? Can there be a parallel, like oil and gas exploitation in Norway, it brought a lot of positive things to you. Can lithium bring a lot of positive things to Serbia?
Well, it's difficult to predict, but I think, as I said to you, it depends on the management of the resources, about how you handle the income from these resources, but of course also how you invest it, and that you have a social dialogue with the population, very important. The environmental impacts, very important. There are so many issues that you need to take into consideration when we talk about natural resources, because it has an impact on the nature, but then you need to limit that impact as much as possible. And that is, you need to have a dialogue with the population that will have to be impacted by this as well. It's really important. If you are not, it's not just about what you are doing the right, coming with the fact, it's also how you communicate it. You must communicate in a way so people understand really what is this, what are the benefits, but also what are the disadvantages here, what will it mean for me.
People can say that oil and gas also could have destroyed nature in Norway. However, of course, that did not happen. If there is a country that knows how to mitigate the risks when it comes to critical minerals, when it comes to oil, when it comes to gas, then Norway knows how to preserve the nature, how to preserve environment. What's the key for that? Experts?
Well, of course, you need experts as you said, you need to mitigate. You need to really look into all kind of aspects, but you also need to be transparent. So, everything you do must not be hidden for anybody. Everybody needs to know what is exactly everything. Otherwise, you lose. For people, it's important to know. Well, in Norway also, we have protest against different fields, whether it is mining, whether it is windmills as well, anything. This saying, not in my backyard. Nobody wants something close to them that can actually disturb or destroy what they are used to. So then we need the need to do it in a way that it does not impact more than necessary. But it's a balance here. We need the energy, but we do not want it here, or we do not want any to be impacted by it. So how can we find a balance? That's the question.
Good communication with local community and also facts. Facts.
Facts is so important, but facts needs to be communicated in a way so people understand. Because, you can use a one-liner, and everybody believe you that this is dangerous, you will die tomorrow or whatever. But, when you come with facts, it's very difficult to come with a one-liner. Yeah, and then it gets boring, and then people do not want to listen to it. So, those with facts always struggle when it comes to communication. So how to you need to get under the skin of people, and you need to actually get into their emotions as well.
Wonderfully said. And that gets us back to experts. A lot of experts, a lot of facts, and let experts actually speak because they know what they're talking about.
Absolutely. But they also need some education and communication so that they can speak in a way that people understand.
Communication is everywhere.
It is.
That's also the reason why you're here today. Also economic benefits. I would say that exploitation of oil and gas in Norway definitely changed the background, economic background in Norway. How much it helped the citizens having better standards?
We had our fisheries, we have our industry when it comes to raw material and so on, but oil and gas really changed everything. Standards, the income, but I like to say always, because Norway's wealth is not just because of oil and gas. It's also about inclusion of women in the workforce. We have a former prime minister, he always used to say this, that, we also, the inclusion of women in the labor market, maybe were even more important than the oil and gas.
Speaking about the role of women, there is also significance of your scarf that you're wearing today.
Yes, I decided, that it is the fight against violence against women, the 16 days, and the Orange the World. So I thought it was appropriate to bring a little orange into the into this room today.
Thank you very much. A little bit of orange into this grayness of our studio, but it has its purpose, and it's important to talk more about the power and empowerment of women, but also about how important it is to have more female in all spheres, in the politics as well, in diplomacy.
Absolutely. Gender equality is the important. Then the same kind of possibilities for everyone. It's not that everyone are made for every kind of job. We have our preferences, we have our talents, but there's not should be anything of shut or closed for any woman to and in that also, of course, with this campaign, that women should not be afraid to be, in their home, even, will be afraid of violence. But it's not just about violence against women, it's also about violence against men. When we talk about equality, it is about both genders, So, but I'm for that we all, have the same possibilities, and we can make our choices. And then you need the government and the legislation to open up for that.
Norway is very famous when it comes to human rights, when it comes to the level of female rights. What Serbia can learn in that sense from Norway, especially when it comes to female empowerment?
Well, I think that Serbia actually has done a lot already. You have women in politics. You have actually women in companies. I actually learned that you had more female leaders in companies than actually we had. So sometimes maybe you also need to learn something from you. I always into dialogue, how we can learn from each other, how we can look into good practices. We have, where we are good is for, maternity leaves and, making it easy for both men and women, because we also have paternity leaves.
Extremely important topic.
Yes, so that, the balance between work and family life, making everything, possible for both men and women to have a family, but also to have an interesting job. I think that is a very important part of it.
Nowadays, it looks like it's actually difficult to manage to have that critical balance between life and work.
Yes, and we bring the work back home. I have done it myself.
In our laptops, we bring it all around the city with us.
Absolutely, we should, always be reachable and so on. And I have done it myself also. I remember, running from work, picking up the children in kindergarten, getting home, playing, putting to bed, and then open my laptop. So yes, I know it is difficult, but then also I think you need to be a little strict with yourself and put some kind of priority. I have done it myself. I have a priority. I need physical training, so now I put into my calendar. Now I have my physical training, and then I have evenings that I need to relax, and then I decide today I'm not doing anything. I need to relax. So you need to take care of yourself, because nobody else actually do it.
It's a great piece of advice for young female in many fields, but also for young female leaders. Perhaps something from your personal perspective and your personal life. What would be, if you could choose just one piece of advice for young female leaders in Serbia, in the region, in the world, how to manage to have both private and work life, what would that be?
Oh, well, first one advice I will give first is that don't be afraid of challenges. And, believe in yourself, because sometimes you have a tendency to kind of downplay ourselves. Be tough, believe in yourself, because you have so many talents. When it comes to, the balance, I think it is actually about logistics and structure, and you need to understand that you can't do all. So you need to prioritize. That's very important.
Perfect. And I hope that the spectators and the listeners of our videocast podcast, especially the female ones, would actually take it into consideration and apply in their everyday life. Speaking about human rights and female rights, it's all connected with the state of democracy, with the state of human rights, with the state of freedom in a country. How would you reckon the state of democracy in Serbia, and perhaps what would you say that could be done to improve that?
Well, in one way, when you see the surveys, okay, you have elections, you have a democracy, but when you listen to the civil society, there, there are concerns about the areas. In particular, now we see that they think that their window of action in a way is much kind of narrower than before, and there are. I still see that there are freedom of speech here, but there are some that are maybe more self-censorship than before, which is a kind of worrying concern. And of course, when you look into the media, but this is not just for Serbia in a way, but this polarization, that either or, that is not healthy. But this is not particular for here. This is a tendency. Well, I'm sad to see it, but this is a tendency we see also in other countries. And also how to kind of get over that. This is about our political leaders. They need to open the space for the rise. And when I heard, I wanted to mention one thing that actually almost shocked me and that was that women here, when it comes to inheritance, they have a tendency to actually, say no to their rightful heritage.
Unfortunately, they do.
Yeah?
Unfortunately, they do.
The law is from the 40s, I understood. But, they say no, and for their brother or other male relative to get that heritage. And that shocked me. But this is culture. And it has nothing to do about, the law or how, So you have a lot of good laws, but they need to be implemented, and actually the people need to, apply them.
It's a very important topic. You've mentioned it. Unfortunately, it can be a whole show just about female perspective in the field of inheritance in Serbia. I would like to add that, unfortunately, a situation is like that if a female person says no, it means that later, because of our legislation, that same female person cannot apply for any social help.
Yes, I also heard about this.
Rights, climate change, the situation in the world, it's all boiling basically right now, as well as the climate change. There's been a lot of activism in that field. The Paris Agreement and the fight against climate change require a gradual reduction of the role of fossil fuels. That gets us again back to the story of fuels. However, Norwegian companies have contracted the sale of oil and gas to the European Union, even beyond 2030. That's, let's say, a key year, which has been set as a deadline. So how much of a long-term business decision is this one?
Well, we are thinking about the short term and the long term. The long term is the green transition, but the transition means that you need to have also energy in the transition period. So we are also working towards the renewables. But in the meantime, we need to have a plan, how to continue to provide energy to, European countries that need it. So it's not like, if we cut today, then we will have, big challenges for the industry, for the standard of living, for everything in Europe. So, this is, yes, we will continue, but we are working in parallel. Towards the renewables, with for us it as I mentioned, we have the hydropower, of course, but for us it will be especially offshore wind. One thing, even solar can be an issue also in Norway. We talk about hydrogen, green hydrogen, which also is another matter.
Very important for the green agenda.
Absolutely. So, it's about the energy mix. And that, I think, is for all countries. You need to come up with a mix. You can't rely on one source. You need to have a mix of every source, depending about, especially when we are dependent about weather, that this is not predictable. So you need to have several sources. And of course, we have also this carbon capture and storage, which we have technology or established technology for that, and it will be stored under the seabed, in the North Sea. So that's technology, but it is up to reduce emission. Everything now is about reducing emission. I would just add also, since we know that for the time being there are discussions in Busan in South Korea about plastic, that is another topic which also need to be handled. Plastic comes from oil, but how to reduce the plastic, and then we come into the circular economy. How to use, reuse, also transform into energy when it comes to waste. So there are so many areas where we work and where we have actually expertise, and I think that we also have competence that we could provide for Serbia.
Energy, alternatives, that actually it's all in the security area. It's very important to be secured. Serbia is surrounded by NATO countries. What would be a benefit for Serbia if Serbia joined NATO allies?
Well, Norway, we have been part of NATO since its establishment. We're one of the founding nations, and for us, this is really our security anchor. This has served us well for our security, for the stability. So I think, for Europe, the Western Balkans, if you can call, this area that, a stable, secure Western Balkans is very important also for our security. And I think, for Serbia, Serbia is a partner, Partnership for Peace has been there since 2006, if I remember correctly. But, we would very much like Serbia also to become part of our alliance. NATO is not just about security. It is also about values. So it's also a community of values. And it is about, it is not an aggressor. It is about protecting ourselves and collaboration in that process. So, yes, you can say you are surrounded. So in a way you are secure because you are surrounded by NATO. But to be part of that community, I think it is beneficial.
Especially for the state of the army, of the Serbian army.
Yeah, the Serbian army already collaborate with NATO countries in exercises and what we call interoperability. When it is actually working very well. So, and you have highly qualified military. Yes, of course, for the army to get up to the standards, but you are also actually following the NATO standards for the time being.
Which is great, but we need to do more and improve it even more. How do you reckon the security situation in the world in the light of the situation in Ukraine? Soon enough, we are going to have, unfortunately, the third anniversary of this terrible aggression on the territory of Ukraine. There's been wars in the Middle East. How do you reckon it all?
Well, it is, it's disturbing, and we live in a very unpredictable time, and of course, the aggression when one country attack another sovereign country, that is really a game changer, and this is so, they are fighting for our security, they are fighting for us. Ukraine cannot lose. So we must do our utmost, but this is terrible. And then we have the situation in the Middle East as well. When we look at how is going on in Gaza and so on, it breaks your heart. At the same time, the attack, Hamas attacks on Israel was also devastating.
Yes.
And these are only two crises, but then we have all the crises we do not hear about, but are already also there on the African continent. Sudan, for example, is one example. So it is a very you should think that we had come further today and that we could manage, to live in peace and prosperity. But unfortunately, the situation nowadays is so worrisome and unpredictable, and I don't, know how this might end. Yeah. So, of course, this is an impact on all of us.
That's why it's even more important for Serbia to become both a part of the EU, European Union, and NATO in the sense of everything that is happening. Thank you very much for your time. In the end, I like asking my guests for one message for the Serbian public. What would you like to say to the public?
I would just like to say that, Serbia is a European country, just like Norway, and we welcome you to be part of the European Union and NATO as well.
Thank you very much. Poštovani gledaoci, gledali ste još jedno izdanje emisije Pola sata Demostata. Ovo je bio intervju sa ambasadorkom Norveške, a mi se gledamo u nekoj narednoj epizodi. Moje ime je Tamara Bajčić i do tada ne zaboravite da lajkujete naš sadržaj i pretplatite se na naše profile na društvenim mrežama, kao i naš kanal na YouTube-u Demostat. Doviđenja i prijatno!